Hello, everybody. Welcome to our February nutrition talk. We are talking today about food noise. If you don't know what food noise is, of course, I am going to explain it. But this is a topic that I was really excited about because, just as a dietitian, it is a newer concept that I think appeals to, I shouldn't say appeals, um, re- relates to a lot of people and a lot of people struggle with. And it is a huge barrier to the success of weight management if you're trying to lose weight, right? When you're trying to meet these either fitness goals or weight goals, management goals, or weight loss, right? It is a huge obstacle. So I wanted to give you a little bit of information about what it is, number one. Number two, um, why there is such a relationship between food noise and Ozempic. Ozempic is a pretty hot topic, so I'm going to talk about that for just a little bit. And then I want to give you some tips on how you can use the way that you eat, so your nutrition, to help battle food noise. So, what is food noise? Food noise is this heightened and or persistent manifestation of food cue reactivity. So this has been studied for a long time, and it has mostly been studied under the term of food cue reactivity. Food cue reactivity is the response that we get kind of like in our brain when we see, or I should say when we smell like uh, meat sizzling on the grill, or when you see, I don't know, cupcakes that look really, really delicious. It's more of that kind of like eat with your eyes and eat with your senses type of relationship that you have with food that kind of makes you, have cravings for certain types of food. Okay, so it's a heightened and or persistent manifestations of food cue reactivity, often leading to food related intrusive thoughts and maladaptive eating behaviors. I also categorize this in a way of obsession over the quality or impact of what you eat, feeling guilty after eating, or just having any type of negative emotion that's in relation to what you have eaten or not eaten, as well as this continuous mental energy that you are expending throughout the day that's revolving around food. Why do we care about this? So this is there was a study that was done that had people talking about the level of food noise, and this quote that I will read is how they explained what food noise is. So it's thinking about foods all the time, particularly highly palatable and energy dense foods, feeling tempted to check your food delivery applications multiple times a day, and thinking about the next meal they'll consume while eating a meal. Okay, that sounds like very negative behavior. That sounds like obsession, right? And that's kind of what it is. Why we care about this is because if your food noise is that loud, this phenomenon might pose a significant barrier to the successful lifestyle changes, contributing to overeating, maladaptive eating behaviors, including emotional eating. So we care about this because it is a huge impact in our overall success when it comes to trying to eat better. And it really is kind of like validation in a sense that it's not just about willpower and it's not just about discipline when you're trying to lose weight. Now, some people have higher levels of food noise. So, one thing about me, if you care to know, is my food noise level, as we kind of like talk about this. If I were to rate my food noise level from a scale of 1 to 10, I would honestly rate my food noise level at a 15. I do not ever stop thinking about food. And that's a bad thing. I'm not embarrassed to admit it. It's something that I struggle with and I feel like I handle it very, very well. And it doesn't help that my original career was culinary. It doesn't help that my favorite hobby is baking, and it doesn't help that my career is in nutrition now. So my literal life does revolve around food. So there is a good portion that I'm spending healthy time thinking about food. But I also do all of those things. I think about my next meal, and sometimes it's in a positive way because I'm planning, but it is a lot of mental energy that I put towards that. And I don't know what really is the cause for me specifically. I've always just chalked it up as a passion, but there's other things that can cause people to have this higher level of food noise, and it makes it really, really difficult. And it makes it really, really difficult for me. So number one, if we know that like poor sleep, having a poor diet, being on a diet, sometimes having a lot of stress in your life, all of those things can increase our food noise. Or if you've watched I did another nutrition talk on how to avoid feeling hangry, right? So essentially the relationship between our emotional being or being overtired and how that affects what we eat. But not only that, but if you have a disordered pattern of eating, not necessarily an eating disorder, but if you like to binge eat, if you don't eat in regular patterns, whether it's because of your work or whatever, lifestyle, that can be a big contributor to that level of food noise. Also, if you have a negative food association, which kind of goes hand in hand with the disordered eating pattern, but if you just overly judge the type of food that you eat, that can make you think more about food because you may be having like emotional thoughts or stress or shame over the type of food you eat. But outside of kind of some of that mental capacity, it's also potential medications, also medical conditions that might increase your food noise. So just something to consider. Now, if you were to Google food noise, like if any of you were to get on the internet and start Googling food noise, you will see something related to Ozempic and food noise pop up. The reason why is because one of the major benefits that people have talked about while being on Ozempic is that it quiets the food noise. I like to think about food noise as being constant, right? If you're someone who has experiences a lot of this food noise, I like to think about it like a radio. So your volume's either really, really loud, or you can turn the volume down, but it's still there. So some people might have a lower volume, some have a higher volume. And if you can imagine that if you can take a medication to reduce the level, you might really be interested in that. And so there is a lot of attraction there. I will say that I haven't really heard of a lot of people that specifically take Ozempic because it reduces food noise, more so that a lot of people will, it might be a reason for them to, like, I guess, enjoy being on Ozempic for weight loss. For that reason, it makes it a little bit easier. But I just wanted to talk about Ozempic a little bit because there is such a huge association between food noise and Ozempic that is very tempting to say, I'm just going to take this drug that I can reduce the volume and make my weight loss journey or my nutrition journey a lot more manageable. So let's talk about what Ozempic really is. Ozempic is a semaglutide medication. It belongs to a class of medications known as glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonists. This is important. We're going to talk about this a little bit again later. What GLP-1 does is it mimics the GLP-1 hormone. Agonist means that it's doing what your body wants it to do. We're not blocking a action, we're causing an action. So it acts like our GLP-1 hormone, and this hormone is released in our gastrointestinal tract in response to eating, and it helps to give you the feeling of fullness. So we can eat food that will do this for us. And so what this does is it is doing this for us with the use of the medication. It also helps to prompt the body to produce more insulin, which is why Ozempic and semaglutides are used in people with type 2 diabetes. Now, there's two kind of major ones that a lot of people talk about. The Ozempic injection and Rybelsus tablets are designed to lower blood sugar levels in adults with type 2 diabetes in addition to diet and exercise. Wegovy is more of a obesity medication, so it's targeted more so for people specifically just because they're overweight or obese, or they might take it as a weight loss medication. Ozempic is more so where it is prescribed because of you having type 2 diabetes and other related risk factors, and the byproduct is also weight loss. So some people are put on Ozempic to control their diabetes, and it has nothing to do with weight loss at all. There's really nothing wrong with either. Just wanted to give you kind of an idea of what those two are. Now, how do I feel about Ozempic as a dietitian? I'm just going to give you my stance just so that you can, I guess, have a little bit of how does a dietitian feel about it. And I'm going to tell you not every dietitian feels the same way, but this is how I feel about it. I believe that natural should be first, and food truly is our medicine. That doesn't mean that I'm saying I'm not for Ozempic. That means that I would encourage a client of mine or a patient of mine to go the natural route first. That's always going to be my route. And to help them do that to the best of their ability until that is not an option anymore. Alternatively, if I had a patient who is already on this, I'm not prescribing it, right? So I either have patients or clients that might come to me and be like, what do you think about this? Should I ask my doctor about it? Or they might say, I have been prescribed this. How do I deal with it, right? So I'm not putting anybody on it. But if someone were to come to me and say, what do you think about this? Should I use it as an option? My first response will always be, let's try everything we possibly can, the natural route with the food that you eat, with the lifestyle that you live, and go that route. If we reach a point where that is not an option, or alternatively, if I have a patient or a client that comes to me and says, I want to be on Ozempic, it is my job as a health professional to help you make an informed decision, support your decision, and support the safety and longevity of the solution that you're choosing. So I hope that makes sense. I'm not for it. I'm not against it. I am a health professional. So my goal is to help you make the best decision possible that's going to give you the best results in the long run. Okay. And this presentation is not just about that. I want to give you some information about the relationship, like I said, that Ozempic has and why it seems so attractive as an easy solution. But I want to talk a little bit about why it's a good idea and why it's a bad idea. So when it comes to the positives, we know that it can be a major contributor to quieting that food noise. And we know that that food noise can be so high that it can make it super, super difficult to stick to your guns when you have, when you're trying to eat in a certain lifestyle or a certain way to promote your nutrition. But we also know that if you are taking it, you're already prescribed it, there is kind of a benefit to, if you are on Ozempic and let's say that you can lose 50 pounds in a year, and not on Ozempic, it takes you 2 or 3 or 4 years or never to lose that 50 pounds. Those are two different scenarios, right? We know that if you can be on something for a short term and not even just Ozempic, but a diet plan, right? If you were doing something like a Jenny Craig or a Weight Watchers, it's not a long-term solution. So if you needed to do something for a short term to expedite your weight loss, as long as it's still healthy weight loss, there is a benefit that can be said about you having 5 months or 6 months or a year on a medication or doing a program that may have, X amount of risk, but in that reducing the length of time that you may be overweight. Let's say that if you didn't start the Ozempic, if you didn't start the diet or weight loss program, that you would be overweight for the next 5 years, then there's something to be said there in the risk in big picture, right? The other benefit is obviously if you already have type 2 diabetes or if you're insulin resistant, it's going to help you with managing your blood sugar. Now, the negatives is kind of like what I was saying, is the Ozempic or a weight loss program is doing the work for you. So when we're talking about food noise, the Ozempic is turning the volume down, but it's not helping you to learn how to manage the food noise, and it's not helping you give you strategies to deal with the food noise or allowing you to practice those strategies. It's just turning the volume down for you, which means when you are done taking it, that volume is going to go right back up and you will be ill equipped to deal with that, which is why a lot of people will gain weight back as soon as they stop taking it. So, in that kind of same breath, it's not a long term solution. The medications are not designed for you to be on them long term. That's not for that. We don't want people to have such uncontrolled diabetes that they're taking so many medications to control it. Kind of similarly, it is a medication, so there will always be potential for side effects. There is the cost factor, there's the availability factor, and this kind of goes for the same thing for like bariatric surgeries and weight loss surgeries. Again, I'm going to be the same kind of stance is let's do everything natural and have exhausted all options first before you have to take that route. If you have to take a medication or if you have to do a weight loss surgery, you are changing so much and you are risking something. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about how Ozempic is quieting that food noise. Because if we can understand how Ozempic is quieting the food noise, maybe we can figure out how we can use our diet to do the same thing. Now, semaglutides, which is Ozempic, right? It works by, number one, delaying your gastric emptying. This is the process by which your food is emptying your stomach. Okay, so think about this like, if it had a little like reservoir of water, and when the water is low enough, it's going to send a signal for you to say, hey, you have to put more water in this reservoir, whatever it is. Okay. Your stomach's going to do the same thing. When your stomach empties, it's telling you, hey, I'm hungry. So what semaglutide does is it helps to not empty that as fast so that you don't have that, oh my gosh, I'm hungry feeling again. And now a craving and maybe that food noise going up. It also increases your feelings of satiety. So it makes you feel fuller longer, which kind of is because it's delaying the gastric emptying, which is helping you focus less on food. There's also some studies that are still trying to figure out the effect that it has on your dopamine pathways in your brain, which is possibly helping to make food less rewarding. Because food can be very, very rewarding because it's instant gratification. Okay, that's key in understanding why a lot of people soothe themselves with food, because you can literally, you don't even have to get in your car. You can order food, you can have a cookie, and it's going to taste good immediately. Now, we've kind of discussed how semaglutide is going to quiet that food noise. It's making your stomach empty not as fast. It's making you feel fuller. It's making your food potentially less rewarding. Now, how can we do the same thing with nutrition? If you eat more whole foods and fiber, your gastric emptying or your stomach emptying is going to be slower. It does the same thing. If you eat balanced meals, you're going to feel more satisfied. If you have a positive relationship with food, or if you use non-food rewards to soothe your emotions, then you will not be making that connection of that instant gratification that you get from food. Okay. So there's a couple of things here that we can do that are going to do the same thing. Might it be turning the volume down as low as taking semaglutide? Maybe not. But these practices are going to help you with the long term, the longevity of your success, because weight management, eating a healthy diet consists of these things, right? Eating whole foods, having fiber, eating balanced meals. So let's go into a little bit more specifics. Number one, eat more often and eat more satiating foods. So the characteristics of what makes a food filling or satiating is that it is high in protein. That's one characteristic. Protein is one of the most filling macros. So out of our protein, carbs, and fats, protein is the most filling macro. It affects our hormones like GLP-1, which is what semaglutide does. So if we eat, again, these filling foods, we're going to cause that same action as what the GLP-1 does and what the semaglutide is also trying to mimic. We also want to eat foods that are high in fiber. It's going to provide bulk. It's going to slow that gastric emptying. And we want to eat foods that are high in volume, high in water. They're going to be low calorie in relation to their energy density. These are our non-starchy veggies. Okay. I have a little list over here to the side of a study that pulled the 10 most satiating foods. And so I listed them there. And number one is a baked potato, guys. Let's eat baked potatoes. There's nothing wrong with that. But as long as it's satiating and you're not having 6 baked potatoes, you can have a baked potato. Add some protein into there, balance your meal out is fine. But we've got baked potatoes, we've got eggs, you've got fish, you've got meat, right? So all your proteins there, Greek yogurt, protein, beans, protein, and fiber. We've got our fruits and vegetables, and then we have our bulky fiber like our oatmeal and popcorn. Okay, so I don't know about you, but most of the stuff on that list sounds really good to me. I was a little surprised about soup, but some people will say soup is very, very filling. It's up to you, right? Eat whatever floats your boat, fills your belly. Now, the other thing I want you to consider is your environment, okay? Our environment is going to really affect the level of food noise. Your food noise may be higher when you're in certain situations or with certain types of people. So consider areas of high temptation. So for example, you may have a harder time resisting that food noise when you're at restaurants, when you're at bars, when you're at social events where food is a big part of that event. Even at the grocery store, how often do you put crazy stuff in the cart because you've gone grocery shopping and you're starving? Okay, so we just want to be mindful of those things. We also want to consider the accessibility of certain food in your home. So again, playing into your environment, when you open up your fridge, how many of you, and I'll say I'm guilty of it too, I put all my fresh vegetables in the stupid drawers that are in the fridge, and then I don't eat any of them because they're out of sight, out of mind. And when I'm smart, I will rotate out my fridge and I'll put, I do have a kid, so her junk goes in there. And then I'll take all of the vegetables out and put them at the forefront. I'm more likely to eat them. I'm more likely to eat them before they go to the trash, right before they spoil. But there's something really, really something to be said about placement of food in your refrigerator and in your home. We also know too that if you don't bring junk into your home, you're less likely to eat it. Because if you have to get in the car to get something you're not supposed to be eating, it gives you that moment of pause to be like, do I really need to go get fast food? Do I really need to go get Cheetos? Right? So be mindful of not only what you have in your home to the degree that you can help it, but also where you put food. Put the healthy stuff or the stuff that you want to eat because it's going to fuel your nutrition. Put it at the forefront, okay? If we are controlling the environment of the areas that are increasing the food noise, that can be just those little bits of chipping away at reducing the food noise in general. This is the same, like if you consider your social group, we all have friends that are, or family, whoever that you hang out with that are foodies, right? Or you have people that like don't care about food at all. Like you like hang out with them, you're like, when are we eating? And they could go the whole time without eating, right? So consider that. You'll have people in your support group that are going to be enablers or saboteurs, but you might also have people that are like-minded that are very conscious of the level of food noise around them and may not want to always be in such a high food setting like a bar, right? We also want to make sure that if the food noise is high, you can only control your food noise so much. So as I mentioned, my food noise is crazy. So I will often put effort into, if my food noise is going to be that high and I'm going to be thinking about food, what I'm going to do and what I do is I try to retrain my body and my palate to want healthier food. So your food noise is going to be high because you're thinking about what you're going to eat, when you're going to eat. You're thinking about food that you are going to really enjoy eating. And so if you make those healthy foods, right? So maybe your whole foods and your vegetables and your whatever, if you make those foods more palatable, more enticing to you, then as you start to crave food, you will start to crave those healthier options. At the end of the day, you will always have a level of food noise. So having that level of food noise doesn't mean you have to eat garbage all the time. That might be the most enticing, but having food noise doesn't have to be negative if you're making the right choice of what you choose to give into. And you have to give into some, you have to feed yourself. So here's a few ways that you can make healthy food more palatable, because a lot of people will tell me, I really enjoy vegetables when I have them when somebody else cooks them, but I don't know how to do it, or I don't know how to cook. Everything tastes bland. So here's a couple of things. First of all, when you have fruits and vegetables, they will taste better if they're in season. So try to eat fruits and vegetables that are in season so they naturally taste better. Use herbs and spices to flavor your food, right? That's like should be a given, but a lot of people don't experiment with different spices, especially when you kind of travel into spices of different cuisines. Okay. There's a lot more flavor that is involved when we look at other cuisines of food. Use citrus, vinegars, and quality oils. So you can get really high quality olive oil that has a lot of flavor into it. And it's going to give you the same amount of calories as a crappy, see-through olive oil that you bought for probably a quarter of the price, but your body's going to process that fat as fat. So you might as well get the flavorful one. Citrus, like your lemons and your limes, is going to give you a ton of punch of flavor and make everything taste so much better. And vinegars as well. These are some of the ways that I like herbs, vinegars, spices is a really good option if you're trying to watch your sodium, either because you have to or because you want to make your food still taste good. None of these things are going to provide you with any sodium unless you're using like spice blends, but there are plenty of blends out there that don't have sodium in them. Also, try roasting and grilling and braising and cooking methods that cause caramelization, that cook food longer, let flavors sit and marry, and cook your own food. That in general, you'd be surprised how much you enjoy your food better if you are cooking it with the way that you want it, number one, but also that you've put that work in. I know not everybody's like that, but like I said, I love to be in the kitchen. So that does help me. I prefer eating my own food, but anyone is going to like food better if you're controlling the flavor, you're controlling the salt, you're controlling, those extra seasonings. Finally, our fourth tip is to identify patterns and triggers in areas where your food noise may be higher. Now, your food noise is likely going to be higher in certain either like associations. So we're going to talk about that. When your emotional states are different. So we know that if you're more stressed, if you're angry, even if you're, happy and you're celebrating, we tend to reward with food, and the thought goes immediately of, okay, what am I going to eat? Or I'm so mad, what is going to make me feel better? So try to see how your food noise is affected by your emotions. And if you're someone who your food noise is exponential when your emotions are exponential, then you may want to try to start associating or looking for non-food soothers and rewards, so that when that level is high, maybe you, instead of, going for wings, you go and like take a bath or something that's not food related, but still gives you that kind of gratification, helps you calm down or whatever the case is. The other thing is consider your natural paths. I think that this is very interesting, and this does affect your food noise because one kind of like this through the door routine. Okay, what this means is, I think I've mentioned to you that I've coached a lot of people and I've coached a lot of women. And one of the things that I think is so funny is a lot of people would mention to me that they found that they were snacking or found that they were extra hungry as soon as they walked through the door of their home. And the reason was because they would, like, let's say, walk through, enter their home through their garage maybe enters their home through their kitchen, and they do this thing where they're like where they're like immediately in the kitchen and they like set their purse down and immediately open the fridge, or they, grab a snack and it's mindless. They're not even thinking about it, right? And so think about the path that you take when you enter your home, and if you have any like habits that happen through there. Also think about the paths that you take when you're commuting to work, when you're going home, even when you're shopping, like areas where you shop in, and think about the kind of food that's around, or think about the response that you have with your food noise of like certain restaurants that are around, or this next one is the relationships and associations that you have with foods. I'm sure that a lot of people deal with this, but like I have a really hard time going into a Target and not wanting to get a Starbucks at the same time. They put it in there, and it's hard to not do those things at the same time. I get like extreme endorphins even when I smell like coffee, right? So these things that increase your cravings, your thoughts of food immediately. This one is like less of a tip, but more so of a open up your consciousness to be aware of where some of these patterns are influencing that food noise. The other thing is that I kind of just put on here is a lot of us kind of develop these associations with foods where they're like, I can't have pizza without wings. I hear that all the time, or I can't eat cookies without milk. And then we've got these associations. So just be mindful of those associations, of patterns, the triggers that will increase your food noise. Now, I have a bonus tip for you. My bonus tip is to ask for help. When I was kind of talking about your environment earlier, there are people who deal with the same type of thing. There are people who, and it doesn't have to be food noise, it can be literally anything, right? So consider support groups, maybe in person, of people that talk about the same thing. Consider Facebook groups. Something that I like to pair with food noise and dealing with food noise is practicing mindful eating and intuitive eating, right? Because we know that food noise is like an emotional overload or obsession with food, and it's not really the physical need for food. It's more of like a mental desire for food. So when you pair that with intuitive eating or mindful eating, which helps you be more in tune to the physical need for food, then it helps you to kind of control both at the same time. Now, there are Facebook groups of people that just talk about mindful eating or intuitive eating. You could also find people who can just kind of support you and be your buddy through the type of exercise, which you guys already have that, as well as maybe people who are trying to eat the same way as you or have the same kind of values as you. Also look into resources. Like, I think that sometimes we forget that that's a thing. Like, you don't just have Google, right? There are people who are experts on certain, factors like intuitive eating or food noise or mindful eating or eating disorders, that write books, right? So look at books, read articles, especially when it comes to something that's like clinical, like Ozempic. If you're like, you know what, I think I want to look into that, talk to a professional about it, and not just your doctor, but read what other people are talking about, their experience with it. And not only just that, but their experience on anything. We love reviews, right? We read reviews of products and reviews of where services, because we want other people to tell us that they had a good experience. So do that, not only just with like, if you wanted to do Ozempic or whatever, but do it with anything. If you wanted to follow a weight loss program, if you wanted to, learn more about a specific type of diet. And finally, consult with a professional like either myself or someone else. But remember that we have professionals who are there to help you deal with these things, right? So I am a dietitian, obviously. I have been a health coach for a long time. I've kind of worked with weight loss specifically for a long time. There's a lot that I can offer you. Ideally, I understand if, like, let's say there's something that you don't love that I say, or you would just vibe with a different type of coach. Like, I completely get that. So what I want you to just like kind of big picture is it doesn't have to be me that you work with, although I would love to work with any of you, but it doesn't even necessarily have to be a dietitian. You can talk to a therapist. You can talk to, I don't know, anyone who has a specific specialty of something that you're struggling with. So in this case, it might be a dietitian. It might be me. I'd love to work with any of you guys. But anyway, consult someone who knows more about what you're going through. And finally, I hope that that was kind of helpful for you guys. Big kind of picture and takeaway is food noise is huge and it kind of like overtakes the day, but there's a lot of ways that we can deal with it. And a big place to start, number one, is to use food to do kind of the same things that something like Ozempic does, that is kind of in a way proven to silence that noise. But just play into what your body is naturally supposed to do. Eat the right types of food, eat filling food, make sure that you are, putting the right types of food and nutrition into your body. So at least when that food noise is really, really high, you can be like, I know I have fed myself well. I know I don't need this. And that can at least be a start. Second thing is when we kind of went through the tips, a lot of the times I said, consider this relationship or consider your environment. Part of being more in tune with that food noise and dealing with it is identifying it and identifying areas where it's higher and use some of the tools that I had mentioned. And then you continue to work on tools, especially if anyone works with me, we didn't individualize those strategies for you, but practice those strategies to deal with food noise, because ultimately that is how you're going to have the most success with your weight management or your weight loss or your nutrition goals in the long term, is if you're continuously practicing them. Like I mentioned, if you do something like an Ozempic or if you do a weight loss program, if you follow a specific diet, that is a tool that is helping you get from A to B. But once that tool is removed or you start using that tool, if you haven't come up with the solutions and the practice and the strategies on your own, you are still starting at the same place when it comes to the longevity of maintaining your weight loss, because you haven't practiced any of that at all. You may have lost 20 pounds or 50 pounds, but you haven't learned how to not do all the things that got you to that 20 or 30 or 50 pound weight gain. Okay. So that is all the food for thought that I have for you. I hope that that was helpful. If any of you deal with food noise, let me know. And I'm sure that everyone kind of deals with it to a certain degree and some more than others for sure. But I hope that was helpful. And as always, if there are any topics you want me to cover, let me know. I'm sure that you will have others that are thinking the same thing. And we've got 10 more months of options. So just let me know. As always, thank you guys so much for listening to me. Bye.